Late night bites with friends? Already hard to beat. That first too hot bite of fries you couldn't wait for, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Now that hits different. Suddenly, the energy kicks back in, the night goes longer, and the laughs don't stop. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
If you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you've probably heard us say that there's a hell of a lot more to a deer than the backstrap. And that idea is really where Cooking by Cuts began. For years, Adam and I have been butchering animals, cooking wild game, testing recipes, and learning. Sometimes the hard way, that the name of the animal matters a whole lot less than understanding the piece of meat sitting in front of you. The neck is a neck, the shank is a shank, flat iron is a flat iron, whether it came from a whitetail, an elk, a moose, a wild pig, a bear, a sheep, or a goat. Anatomy tells you a tremendous amount about how that piece of meat wants to be cooked. So we wanted to write a book that approached wild game from that perspective. Not another collection of venison recipes, not a chapter on deer, followed by elk, followed by moose. We wanted to build something that teaches you to think like a butcher and cook like a cook. To understand where a cut comes from, why it behaves the way it does, and what you can do with it. Today we're going behind the scenes of Cooking by Cuts, where the idea came from, what we learned writing it, what we had to unlearn, the cuts that surprised us, the recipes that kicked our asses, and ultimately why we think understanding the whole animal can completely change the way you cook. So let's jump into it.
Join Justin Townsend and the Harvesting Nature crew as they explore the world of cooking wild fish and game while sharing recipes, tips, tricks, and lessons learned from their pursuit of wild food. We sure hope you ate before the show, 'cause you're gonna leave hungry. This is the Wild Fish and Game Podcast.
I guess a lot of you may have seen on social media, if you follow us on social media. If you haven't, maybe you're just an avid podcast listener and you don't listen to social media, which is fine too. You'll have seen that we've put out a couple posts about our new book, Cooking by Cut. It's due to come out probably in the next week, 2 weeks, whatever. We don't really know. We're just kind of like flying by the seat of our pants on an actual release date. We are super excited. Adam and I have been working on this book for a while, so we're going to kind of go through the book itself and really give you the behind the scenes look, as I mentioned, as to like why we organized it the way we did, why we even wrote this book. So I guess we'll start off with this. Where did this idea come from? And I'll let you run with it for a second, Adam.
So I feel like this book we've been working on for like 3 years maybe now. So it's been a while and it's been kind of a cool process. But I think the idea came from it because, Justin and I end up going to these butcher camps or these different places and are often given, random cuts of animals to cook, and sometimes animals we may not have cooked before. And that's never been much of a problem for us. And I started to ask myself why that is, like why we could just go and show up to a place having never cooked this animal and just end up impressing people. And it really came down to our butchering experience, I think, and knowing each individual cut and how cut works on the animal, how to get it off the animal properly, how it then works in the kitchen. Like say a whitetail neck is going to act much more like an elk neck or a moose neck or an antelope neck more than a venison round, and knowing that each cut has these certain aspects about it has really allowed us to think outside the box and to be able to cook whatever cuts were given in such a way. And I think once we started chatting about that, I think it was probably around a fire with beers after one of the camps, which is where our best ideas come from generally. I think we both got excited and thought to ourselves, we have something here. We have something here that other people haven't written about to our knowledge quite as much. It's something a little different than the way everything else is always organized. There's been, hundreds of butchery books and wild game books and whatever, and they're always separated by species or seasons or different things like that. And I think organizing it by cut and learning these cuts which is something I did before I even learned to hunt, just from butchery, my background in butchery. So yeah, once we had that idea, we started rolling with it, and we got really excited about it. I think we created a podcast about it first with the idea of the book, and started working on the book, like I said, about 3 years ago. And yeah, just started running with it, and it's been really cool because I think we've both been learning a lot more than what we originally needed to about a lot of these like kind of less popular cuts that we've fallen in love with since.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like as we looked through it and taught through it, I think a lot of it came from like instructing via the pig camp, realizing too, like there's not a lot of books out there that really break down the cut by cut. And you think about it, a lot of them are very narrative based, and I wanted something from our side where like you could pick up and flip cover to cover, and essentially like you could read it so you understand it, and that's the goal. And then second, you could like have it open on the butchery table next to you and just literally flip page by page. And the way the book is organized is exactly that, so that you could just go through each cut. Because I don't know how many times at pig camp we'd ask the question, somebody would be like, what's this cut? What's this cut?
Yeah.
What's this cut? You'd tell them and like walk away like 5 minutes later. It's like, what's this cut? And you're like, oh, what's that? And then we started looking, and I tell you, like, Jesse Griffith's Hog book was kind of it was a good inspiration. This, you can see notes with there of like kind of the way it was laid out, but also too, like this book is very much our own. It's not laid out like I don't think any other butchery book I've seen.
No.
And I'd say the inspiration comes from Jesse's because he goes through like the pig size and things like that in the hog book. In reality, though, that book that he wrote changes kind of your perspective on the way in which you look at a wild pig. And you look at it from almost a reverse perspective of like a lot of people think of, I can cook a recipe, what meat do I need? Versus this is the meat I have, what recipe do I need to get with it? And I think that's the problem we intended to solve when we kind of set out. And that's the huge gap that exists. And also, too, like, we wanted to write something different. And I think that's pretty notional to, like, a lot of things that we do, is that we're going to push the envelope, we're going to step outside the box and try to write something, one, that's phenomenal, but two, that's also, like, it's not full of biscuits and gravy and chicken fried steak and, you know, venison kebabs and all that. Like, those are all great and those are all delicious, and they end up on my family's rotation, too. But at the end of the day, like, you can buy 10 wild game cookbooks that have those same recipes in there, or you can Google and in the top, like, 10 searches find exactly what you want. And, like, you can't find a lot of the recipes we wrote in a wild game version, and that was intentional.
Even some of the big cooks that I really respect, the wild cooks, their cookbooks often are full of those kind of standby standard recipes. I'm always a little disappointed when I buy a cookbook from someone I really like, and it's like, oh, it's just this kind of same things. Not throwing shade at all, but just I always am interested in finding something kind of new and exciting to light my brain up with wild game. So I think that's kind of how we went into this book on the recipe side, is like to really push that envelope, like you said.
And I think one thing this book seeks to solve, and we mentioned it a little bit on our last podcast episode with Anna, there's largely like a diminishing of game processors and butchers across the continent, I'm guessing across Europe as well, like all these places. And a lot of people are starting to try to figure out how to do it themselves. And, you know, we wanted to provide a tool where people could just pick up something and do that. And I think this seeks to solve that gap. There's a lot of people that have wanted, you know, the DIY movement has only been ever growing, you know, I would say since COVID, and it just continues to like push forward. But also too, like, if you're not a big hunter and you're interested in hunting, this book is going to talk about hunting from like a philosophical standpoint, but it's more of when does an animal become meat? When do we look at it differently? Like things like that. It's not, you're not getting stories about hunting trips and things like that. Like Adam and I have done those things, but like that's not what this book is. This book's about meat. And like at the end of the day, it's about meat. And but it's weird because it's not a butchery cookbook solely. It's not a cookbook solely. It's not a history book. It's like all these things kind of melded together, and it really, really presents itself in a way in which whatever your interest is, it's going to pique it.
Yeah, I think it allows itself to be read front to back, which is why that's a way I always love reading cookbooks, almost like a Dan Brown novel. I just sit down and read the whole thing front to back. And I feel like we've included, you know, like our sausage book, which just had a shit ton of information just crammed into it. I think we've done that, but we've interspersed, you know, personal essays, interesting recipe intros, cool, exciting recipes that might get your gears grinding or rolling. I think it just allows the book to be, sat down and read front to back, or like you said before, blood splattered on the side of the butcher table, open to a page that you want, that specific cut. The way we organized it, by including our own personalities into it and everything, I think that really helped create a really interesting product.
So let's talk organization a little bit too. I think we've talked about why we've organized it as species, so like that's pretty straightforward. Why we didn't organize it by species, because we want it to be like really generally focused on the cut, not the animal. Yeah. Granted, size is going to change and, fat content depending on what you're doing, but honestly, like you could pick up this book and it could be a domestic goat or a lamb, or I wouldn't say a cow or a pig, because we organize it very different. And you'll see that, like, we didn't write an intro into the book because really the first chapter's opening, which is like the butchery section kind of techniques, is the opening part. So I think when you read that, you'll really understand we kind of established a meat cutting philosophy that bridges a couple different types of butchery, which I think is really important, but also it's organized from the perspective of someone who has broken down quarters in the field and like taken things off, and like that's the way the book is structured holistically, to be like, all right, first I'm going to pull off the front shoulder, and then I'm gonna, then I've got this center section, and then I've got the hind quarter, like the way in which you would kind of break things down, that's the way we kind of like pass through the pages.
And we also included, with our friend Adam Steele, our butchery expert, helped us out with this too, but, skinning instructions, like just all the questions you might have when you get your deer home. This book isn't about, like with your deer in the field, it's when you get your deer or your animal, not any animal, not your deer, any animal home. You're skinning, what to do with, glands, what to do with bloodshot, tainted meat, the temperatures, like all these questions you might have are included in this as well. So you don't need 3 different books. It's all here for you, which I think we've organized it in a linear way, from you start out with your animal whole, and by the end, it's all in your freezer. I
will say too, like, one thing that stands out that you won't see in a lot of, we did wine pairings. Yeah, we did a whole section. Yeah. We partnered with Pasalaka. Jessica, who's their winemaker there. She went through all the recipes we had and worked on pairings, but there's also like a good couple pages on like learning to kind of wrap your head around how to pair wine and wild game just holistically, which I think is a really great opportunity. I feel definitely a lot of wild game cookbooks don't venture into that realm. And I think something that we share of like, hey, we look to make game more approachable. And I think really Jason and his team at Pasalaka Winery, they look to say like, hey, like wine's not something that's like just for sort of the rich and glamorous. Like everybody can drink wine, everybody can enjoy it, and it can really be paired with anything. And I think that follows sort of the structure that we're going with for this book. And we're not just recommending their wines in there too. This wasn't that kind of partnership. Like they're just recommending all kinds of wines. And then we've got some where theirs would go really, really well. But that's a cool thing to do, because you're throwing a dinner party or you're hosting, or you yourself are like, I'd like to enjoy a bottle of wine tonight. And there you go. You're cooking a recipe out of the book, and you just go find really what you're looking for based off the recommendations. So that's a cool thing that's really unique, I think.
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice-cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Let's go a little bit through the chapter structure. As we look through it, I'm very systematic, and the way in which we organized the book became very systematic. But also too, I think it lends itself well to the butchery process, because if you develop a habit over time of this is the way that I do it, you can move through animals quicker, your skill gets sharpened, your focus gets sharpened. So we wanted to order a consistent framework kind of throughout all these chapters. So we open up with kind of anatomy, talking about the cut, identifying the cut, how to remove it. And you'll see a lot of the pictures are pictures of the cuts of meats from different perspectives with like different identification markers and things in there to help you like answer that question. What cut is this? So like you could flip back, to the pages and try to organize and figure out.
I'm going to just cut you off for a second there too about the cuts themselves. We organized it in such a way that we used the types of cuts that you're familiar with in the grocery store. So each animal and each has its own butchery styles and history and everything. And often like, a pig has different cuts than a cow at the grocery store, even though they're the same actual like pieces of meat. But we chose to kind of use beef as an example, so you can recognize the cuts that you see in the grocery store, and you can be like, oh, that whatever steak in the grocery store, I want that off my deer or off my bear or off my moose. That's the way we did that purposely, so you could really get a sense of what's what. And there's already some familiarity with that as well, because all of us have been in grocery stores. So when we're identifying the cuts, we really went with that kind of nomenclature for it, and I think that's really helpful too. And there's things like a hanger steak or flat iron steak, like some of these little awesome steaks that butchers really know and not many other people know. We show you how to get those out of your animal too, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's like hugely important because too, at some point in time, like you may have a bad hunting season, you may have something off, like you may not be able to get the meat you want. So like going to the grocery store, you can still buy cuts and sub in for these recipes if you like really, really fall in love with them, which I think you will. Mm-hmm. Some other things we hit on are texture, connective tissue. We kind of go through and rate each cut.
So like the texture, and we say, I have a flank steak open here. So they say the texture is 3 out of 5. It's got long grain and moderately firm texture. We have the intramuscular fat. This is 1 out of 5 because the flank steak is very lean. Connective tissue is moderate. Flavor potential is good, 4 out of 5, because flank has a lot of flavor to it. And each cut that we describe in the book has that profile. So you can get a sense of like, oh, this is going to be a tougher but very tasty cut, or this is a really tender but less tasty cut. You can kind of get a sense. This one has a lot of connective tissue. This one doesn't. So that's very helpful too.
And then I think something that we do that's a little different, instead of like listing all the ways in which, hey, only use our recipes. We're like, actually, here's the best cooking methods for this piece of meat, and here's the things you want to avoid when you're cooking it. And it's very like straight, very up forward, very blunt of like, you should saute this one, or you should stir fry this one. You should not overcook this piece of meat because it's going to turn into dry bootstrap leather. Like,
I think that's crazy helpful for deer hunters. Like something I've spent time with is trying to figure out what questions people are asking Google about their venison and about their wild game meat. And the top questions are always like, why is this tough? Why is it dry? How can I make it, juicy or this or that? And I think the way we've organized this will tell you exactly why your venison is tough or dry or whatever. Yeah. And it will tell you how to not do that in the kitchen. It'll tell you which cuts benefit from, being slow cooked or cooked fast, quickly, or medium rare or whatever. We let you know every single thing about each cut. And I think that will really help you in the kitchen with your own wild game meat.
And then the recipes themselves. So I touched on it a little bit earlier, like different recipes. So these are largely, I'd say, like internationally inspired recipes. We kind of wanted to look for like fun, big, bold, beautiful flavors that complement the cuts. Man, our list ranges, I would say, everything from like, we've got African recipes, we've got Asian inspired recipes, we've got European inspired, South America. I think like we cover every region of the world. Yeah. You can find something.
We didn't get our Antarctica recipe, but it got cut, but
We're not writing a book about penguins. So.
Yeah.
I would say with the recipes, like, we also try to make them, even though they're international recipes, and some international recipes, the challenge becomes like the ingredients. We tried to like tamper that down and really make it approachable. So like you could order things off Amazon or go to international markets and find stuff. Like, it's good. Like, go that extra step. It'll pay off for sure. Like, find some things that make you uncomfortable and cook them. Like, I will say not all recipes are that way. I'm thinking about, like, we have in the ground meat section, we've got one, it's a hummus recipe. And so you make hummus and then you take ground meat and you season it and cook it and then you put it on top with like pomegranate seeds and then you kind of eat it. That's a very straightforward recipe to me that may push somebody out of their comfort limits, but like, that's a really, really good, just very straightforward, easy recipe.
Yeah. And they're not all like that. Like there's some that are pure comfort food too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not all crazy outside recipes. I think each one of them, even if it's pushing the envelope a little bit, is still very much something that your family would probably like to eat.
Yeah. One thing I think is really cool that we did, and I hope people take this away, is that this is some good like barroom banter. We put a whole like cultural inspiration and history kind of paragraph for each cut, which was cool. And, you know, if there were any fun facts or things like that, and tried to include them in there for the recipes themselves too. Like very, very interesting. I think we mixed up the way we talk about the recipes as well, because normally you're like, oh yes, and pairing this foreign tarragon leaf with this lemon, you get this beautiful pan sauce. No, we didn't. We like vary around. Like there's personal stories in there. There's like reasons why these dishes speak out to us. You know, I talk about like having for a ropa vieja, which is like a Cuban dish of almost like shredded meat. You know, my first time ever having Cuban food, and then me kind of like falling in love with Cuban cuisine, and then living in Key West and all these things. Like there's some cool stories behind it. Adam talks about this meatball banh mi that he like dreams about. There's some cool personal touches in there too, but it's not overly like, I don't know, story driven.
Yeah, it's not like a food blog where you're scrolling through like 30 pages of nonsense to get to the recipe. It's just like a short blurb of what that recipe means to us, and I think it's pretty entertaining. Hopefully it is for others too.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, and this is going to be something that can be a little spicy for some, but it's important for the theme of this book, is like sort of unlearning what hunters think they know. And this is going to speak largely broadly to all of us. Like I learned in this book. I learned writing this book. I'm sure Adam did too. Like
definitely, yeah.
Thinking through like, why do hunters value the backstrap, you know, the tenderloins, these sort of like prize cuts. And as I'm sitting here writing these books, and, you know, I love these cuts too. They're all really delicious. All cuts are delicious. That's one thing I've learned from this. Like,
yeah.
Every cut of meat is delicious depending on how you cook it. That's the main takeaway. But I don't know, like, it still becomes even harder now that I know a lot about it, of ranking my favorite cuts. Like, if somebody asks me that, like, tell me your favorite cuts, it becomes more of a challenge now, because I know there's, like, a lot of nuances in the back of my mind. Not being like, well, rank your favorite cuts. It's more like, what do you feel like cooking at the time, and what cut can better complement that dish? As that, like, my mind's completely shifted.
Like, is it summertime? Because maybe a steak over a campfire is my favorite cut. But in wintertime, maybe a slowly braised neck or something.
Yeah, maybe
there's so many factors that really change my list constantly. I could never have like a static list anymore.
And I think this whole like concept of like cuts being overlooked, after kind of diving into each cut, I don't understand it now, because each cut of meat can shine like really on its own. And so like leaving things in the field, not getting your cuts left intact and just grinding everything, like now it's like it's really opened my eyes to a lot more, and I'm like, holy smokes, like there's a lot here to unpack. And like, I don't know, we include I think probably like 5 or 6 ground meat recipes in this book, but honestly, like I don't know, I'll still do ground because you'll have trim and stuff like that, but like I will now lean towards whole cuts, because I just have this big beautiful resource of like, I can just, whatever I write on the cut when I'm butchering it, like flip to the page or the chapter on it, section on it, and be like, oh yeah, this is that. So I may not necessarily follow my own recipe, but I can, you know, remind myself of like, oh yeah, it's a shank I'm going to braise, or, you know, a top round, I may slice that thin and stir fry. You know, there's like endless possibilities now. Whereas before it's like, oh yeah, this is a big giant hunk of meat. It'll probably do really good to be ground. Maybe I'll make some burgers.
I think part of it, it's something I'm just kind of forming right now as we speak. Why, you know, these other cuts are less preferred to the backstrap, because, you know, the backstrap's great. And we're not talking shit about the backstrap, because obviously it's good. But often to the detriment of the rest of the animal, because the rest of the animal is just whatever ground, whatever. But I think it's something, I was just talking to a bartender the other day, and we're talking about fishing, and he told me that northern pike tastes like crap. I said, does it really? He's like, well, I didn't like it. And I'm like, you're full of it, because I've had pike so many times and it's just not bad at all. It's such a lovely fish. But what sucks about it is that it takes time and effort and skill to properly fillet it. And that's annoying. So other people just like walleye, and that's it. And I think that's similar to these things. Like the backstrap, it's easy to remove from the animal. You don't have to think about it. It's kind of right there for you. It's easy to cook. It tastes good really easily. You don't have to do much. You can put some salt on it, sear it, and it's delicious. Where a lot of these other cuts take time and skill to cook. And I think people don't like feeling unskilled, so they just say, the rest is garbage. This is the good stuff. That's all there is to it. And you can kind of see that, with what Anthony Bourdain talked about in the past and everything about rich people and poor people food. Rich people take all the easy, glamorous kind of cuts, and the poor people are stuck with the harder to cook cuts. And in the end, they make much better food with it.
Yes.
And I think that's we were showing that throughout this book as we cooked each individual cut, how it does take a little more skill, it takes more effort, it takes more forethought. Luckily, this book will teach you all those skills, so you don't have to worry about that. But I think that really showed to me that it's less about flavor and texture and stuff and more about people shying away from the hard stuff. Yeah, that's kind of my philosophy on the whole matter.
I could totally see it that way. Yeah, and the approach becomes very different, right? And it's, you could definitely just straight up sear some pieces of meat and season with salt and pepper, enjoy the flavor of the animal. It's some of those you got to break down, Adam's favorite phrase, that unctuous mouthfeel, doesn't come from a quick sear in a pan. And that's all presented very straightforward kind of in the book. It's
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice-cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Let's switch over to a little bit kind of looking beyond North America. We talked some about the recipes themselves, but even think about other global food traditions just from a butchery aspect. Mm-hmm. Thinking through some cultures that have inspired us a lot from a traditional butchery standpoint, nose-to-tail cooking. I don't know. I feel like every place I've visited outside North America has such a strong presence for a forward-leaning butchery culture. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just the availability of the animals not being processed the way we process them here in North America, I think, and a lot of people still doing a lot of that kind of whole butchery themselves, or knowing their local butcher. Communities still organized around butchery. But as far as individual places, I think we have done well to pull from aspects highlighting different sort of loose quotes meat culture from around the world. Mm-hmm. I think everything from the butchery concepts themselves to what are cuts called in different places, to preservation techniques, to even the recipes themselves, as we mentioned. So
and the history of the cuts too, because we're history nerds. If you haven't picked that up out of all our podcasts and everything, so we kind of touch on the actual history of each cut too, which is very interesting in some cases. And some of these cuts are very new, which is also very interesting too. Some of them come from the 1400s, and some of them come from 1990, which I find very interesting.
Which is crazy. I think what was it? We were at the Poma dinner, and we were with the Beef Association people, and I was like, "Thank you guys for inventing the flat iron."
Yeah,
and they're like, "You're welcome." So yeah, crazy stuff like that. It's really cool to dive into. And we've hit on this a lot, but every cut has its purpose. Is another really great philosophy to think through when you're flipping through this book and understanding it. The approach of understanding it is how movement affects the tenderness. So I think that's something we discuss in each cut as well, is every muscle has a job. What's its job, and how does that affect its tenderness and flavor, really? Because you talk something that's used a lot, gets a lot of blood flow, ends up being really flavorful, maybe less tender, but something that your loins that sit at the back of the animal and just kind of really hold things up. They just kind of don't really do that much. They don't get that much blood flow through them like things in the shoulder. So you have to think through that. But that also starts to determine your cooking methods you match with it. So I don't know. We've got a few examples of cuts here.
And I just wanted to mention too quickly, we talked kind of about other butcher cultures, and I found the American and Canadian ones They kind of came from a German butchery mixed with like the new style, mixed with a little bit of British. But if you look into any butchery around the world, it's going to be very different from ours, which is really interesting. People take apart animals very differently in each place. And what we've seen in America, because meat is so cheap, people tend to get larger, bigger cuts. But inside those larger cuts are several other little cuts. So, a whole shoulder. Everyone wants a whole shoulder for making pulled meat sandwiches or whatever, which obviously delicious. But inside that shoulder, there's several other cuts. And there's other cultures like French butchery or different things like that, which prize the smaller cuts within those muscle groups. And I think we did kind of a half and half here. We found some of those smaller ones, like flat iron, like Denver steak, like mock tender, which are all hidden inside the shoulder, which is often just ground or cooked whole. But those are some of our favorite steaks. Like that flat iron steak out of the shoulder is incredible.
Really good.
It is incredible. And that's often just being ground up without anyone even noticing it's in there. So we have stuff for like whole muscle in here, but we also went in and found the smaller cuts that are well worth finding.
I would say too, like that lends itself like the Denver steak as well. That's one of those sort of like hidden behind the shoulder itself as part of the main body that's often like cut through and kind of just like that gets tossed in the trim pot, but really a phenomenal. And I'll say this like over and over, like the Denver steak is where you're going to find your marbling on most wild game. Like, it exists kind of right there in this weird place. The neck, a lot of times, like if your state doesn't have want and waste laws, or if you're not hauling out whole deer, like that neck maybe get left in the field really easily. So like that's something like you're missing out on a ton of meat there, and it's not just destined for the grind pile. Like there's so many things you can do with it, and you'll see that. Shanks, sirloin, we break the sirloin down as well as the round as well into like some different cuts,
and that's something that I rarely see outside of what we do. I've seen it in a couple places, mostly people who I respect, who know what they're talking about, Tank Shaw, the Jesse Griffiths of the world. But there's a top sirloin cut on unglets, like deer, moose, and elk and everything, and that's one of my favorite steak cuts out of all the animal. Is a top sirloin, and it's often not even mentioned within butchery or within wild game butchery. And that's just kind of, separate from the sirloin tip, which is your football roast, which often gets called top sirloin, but it's not. So there's some intricacies like that that you'll learn in the book, and you'll find some cuts that you'll be amazed that that you weren't eating them because they're so good. Like the Denver steak, like the top sirloin.
Yeah, even the sirloin tip. Like we go down into that detail. I think one of my favorite ones, and this is maybe just selfishly on me, like we break down the ribs.
Yeah.
Into like what you would see at the grocery store of like kind of the types of ribs, your baby back ribs, your short ribs, like all those exist in the same format on wild game, and they will perform the same way if you cook them the same way. At the whole end of this, like what you should be left with is like all your cuts laid out on your table. You should have like a pile of bones, which guess what? We have a section on making stocks on what to do with the bones.
Marrow
all marrow, all those things, like use those things, and then you should have like a little pile of trim. And outside of that, like everything should be there for you. Also, too, we haven't talked about this yet, which we should have talked about way earlier. We have a whole section on the fifth quarter, which is like, that's the offal. We go the head, the tongue, we talk about the kidneys, the liver, the heart. We talk about the trotters, testes, like all of it. Like literally, I mean, there's lots of other edible parts on the animal that we didn't get into, like the lungs and the stomach and the intestines and all that. Like we didn't teach you how to make your own sausage casings, but maybe next time. Maybe that's the advanced version of the sausage book. That's a teed up topic for that. Making your own casing. Ooh, that's good. But I would say like there's like some there, like the caul fat too. Like we've done it. I think almost all of it, I would say. I don't know. Did you get surprised by any cuts as you were starting to break them down? We were like, oh, I thought this would do this, and instead it was sort of a different way altogether.
I don't know. I think we did so much research on this book that anything that I might have been surprised about, I was forewarned about, because we really did a lot of research for this book and for the podcast that kind of goes with it.
You mentioned earlier, so we did the whole podcast series, which you'll find on here, and actually maybe in a future edition we'll add that as like a scannable feature in the book to like get to some of those episodes where they talk about it, where we talk about it a little more. If you don't get tired enough of hearing our voice, you can listen to it more. But I think researching it for the podcast was kind of like the first point, and we really wanted that would help us organize all of our notes kind of section by section. Then we did the butchery kind of design and photography next, and that was Adam doing that down at his place in Florida.
Adam Steele.
Yeah, sorry, not you. Adam Steele doing it down in Florida at his place. So actually, you'll see a few pictures of Adam Berkelman's and I, but you'll see a lot of pictures of hands and things belonging to Adam Steele. So he did a lot of the photography for us as being the model, the excellent hand model. So that part went there. Then I think after we did that process, we wrote the recipes, and that was kind of like, the recipes took a while. It took us like a year or more to get through all the recipes. Yeah,
because we wanted to use different animals, so it wasn't all just venison, because this book isn't about just venison. It's about encountering any animal and being able to cook and butcher it. So I think it took us some time to actually go and hunt all these things.
Yes.
Bring it home, have the right stuff, have the right timing, make the right stuff.
You're like, man, I just shot through the shoulder. There goes the flat. I gotta go back out. So we divided too, like what we had in our freezer, what we had available, what we knew we could go out and get, like all these things. And then the butchery instruction itself is like, you almost had to sit and recreate and take notes, go through butchering. I think I butchered 1 or 2 deer and several pigs like through this process, which started to like really inform and started to take a lot more mental notes. But then also like going through the process in my mind of like, okay, how do I remove the quarters? Like, what specifically did I do? And if somebody's approaching this from a very first standpoint, like, how many details am I going to dive into? Like, all right, put the front shoulder on a table. Make sure it's inside of the shoulder blade is facing upward. And okay, you're going to identify this cut. Like, you had to give these like visual markers for people to understand it. It took a lot of like visualization as you're like writing out the words.
Yeah, I think that was something you really shined at.
Thank you.
You really shine at. It's you're able to visualize it and then talk through the entire thing through your mind, which is something that I'm not as good at, so I'm glad you were able to do that so well. I think I can extrapolate and talk off the cuff and everything, but you're very good at doing that kind of systematic, all the way through, and that really helped me after reading your descriptions of finding exactly where I need to be for what I need to talk about or write about. So I think that's like a really cool part of the book, is if you're a learner that does better with like reading something, it's going to be very clear. If you're not such a visual hands-on learner, if you read, and then we also have the visual there for you too if you're not. So like with the photos and really clear, awesome descriptions of each thing.
I would say like debates between us, I don't think we had any big like stylistic debates or things like that, like the way we organized it or kind of a back and forth. I don't think we had that. We kind of organized our plan early on and stuck to it.
And I think that's something that the reason we're writing so many books together is because we really mesh well. We discovered that when we started hanging out. And you'll notice that like we didn't make these recipes together. We each made our own recipes and included them in the book. And you'll be hard pressed to really see too much difference between them, because I think we have a very similar style, similar photography style. Like it's different, but it doesn't clash at all. It all kind of fits. And then I think our writing styles complement each other. So I think it was actually, we generally have a very easy time writing books together. And I can't think of one time we were mad at each other or hot-headed or debated anything. It just goes really nicely. So I think you'll probably see a lot more books co-written by us.
The only one we debated about, and it didn't make it into the book, was including like a gross things you find while butchering section. I thought it would be a really good idea, and Adam's like, no, that's really not great because you don't want to gross people out. I was like, yeah, but sometimes you're just like, hey, what is this weird thing I'm seeing? And so I like had identified and put together like a page to cover that. And then we ended up filling it with something else. It worked out. But that was a point of conversation.
I think we'll do that as an article.
Yeah. I will say this. So we had some different friends and stuff do kind of aspects of the butchery photography. We did some of the butchery photography, but Adam and I did all the food photography ourselves, and then like I laid out the book.
Yeah. Another thing Justin's very good at, which is something I'm not very good at. So another good thing that was
fake it till you make it. So like artwork, all that other stuff. Everything was done in house. So we did it all ourselves.
Yeah, editing, writing, photography, cooking, butchering,
and Borgerman went through the book. You went through the book several times. Adam Steele's seen the book. Hank Shaw, who wrote the foreword, has gone through it. Like, had a lot of eyes on it from a lot of different people who have a lot of varying levels of experience. And I think like that presents itself very solid. A lot of kind words. You'll read Hank's foreword, and he speaks very kindly to us, which I'm thankful for. And, really says this book earns its place on the shelf next to his and many, many others of people who are sort of pushing this like nose to tail, head to hoof, whatever you want to call it, type eating forward. So take that for what it's worth. unexpected challenges. I would say we initially started to try to get this book published by a traditional publisher, and that's probably another reason why it took so long to make, is that we spent probably like 6 to 8 months like reaching out to like hundreds of literary agents of like, hey, here's our book, let's pitch it. Like, I talked to someone on Instagram and in person. Adam must have sent 5,000 emails back and forth. And you know what?
Still waiting on those.
Yeah, we're still waiting on responses. So I think maybe collectively we got like 5 responses from like literally like 500 people we reached out to. But you know what? At the end of the day, man, I won't say this is our middle finger to the publishing world, but it's kind of our middle finger to the publishing world. Like we just decided to do it ourselves. It's not the first time we've written our own books and self-published them and all that. I would say this is the largest of the books that we've done and the largest project that we've put together. So
I think we were thinking about publishing because we wanted this one to be spread a little further than our natural range with our fan base and stuff. But in the end, I think we're both of the type of people who really buck at doing things for the way other people want. So even if we did get a publisher, if they started changing our whole book and idea around, I think both of us would have been like, nope, see ya.
Yeah, and I mean, we had those conversations with various folks during that of like, oh, you should do this different, or do this different. I'm like, I don't want to. Yeah, and that's kind of, we both had a vision in our mind of like the way we wanted the book, and knew that, this is as much sort of like Adam and I writing about our passion for butchery and cookery as it is like a book to help everybody else. Like this kind of brain dumps all the knowledge that we've learned over the years through experience, through cold freezing hands and sliced up thumbs and, late nights and early mornings. And, oh my God, I can't do that because I got to make sausage out of this stuff that I put in the freezer yesterday. Like this is that. So, and I think that it's a dedication too to what I hope does not become a dying art. Like this is our sort of placement to be like, hey, let's keep pushing this ball forward. Let's keep allowing people to learn. And, here's another resource people can use. Like everybody learns different ways. Maybe our book is it, or maybe, you're picking up a traditional French butchery book and that's really what you jive with. Like whatever. I don't give a shit at the end of the day. Like just figure it out, learn to do it yourself, take care of yourself, enjoy the meat, really honor the animal. That's kind of where my mind's at with a lot of it.
Yeah. If this book inspired a couple people to bring it to your home instead of sending it to the processor and trying it themselves, then I'd be happy. Yeah. If there was thousands and thousands of people did that, I'd be even happier. But even a couple, I think, because if we inspired people to try things out themselves, I'd sit happily knowing that.
All right, now we got to talk about the future a little bit. This is the uncomfortable, squishy part that Adam and I are still trying to figure out. I plan to launch the book in the next couple weeks. I'm like waiting on a couple copies to proof. The intent is to have it available on Amazon and on our website. Amazon will have a paperback version, and then if you want the hardback version, which is much more beautiful, much more clean, it's going to be on our website. That's the way we're going to do it. Just period. I don't know where it's going to go from here. If other places are going to ask to buy it, we can sell it wholesale. The more books you buy, the better to the discount. If you're interested in stocking Cooking by Cuts and you're someone out there, if you want to buy 5 copies, if you want to buy 500, it doesn't matter. Just send us an email, what'scooking@harvestingnature.com. We will coordinate an order and get it out to you. Okay, that's the big part. Our plan to reach kind of beyond the Harvesting Nature audience, that becomes the more challenging part. So we've done a lot of outreach with lots of conservation groups and cooking and all these other things all over the country, all over both USA and Canada for many, many years. So like expect some emails from us. Hey friends, like, can you help us promote this book? Can you help us do things? Can we show up and talk about it? We want to be on podcasts. So if you've got podcast suggestions for us, or if you are listening to this and you host a podcast, reach out to us. We'd love to come on your show and talk about the book and like go into more detail about this. Expect to see a lot of it on social media. We didn't do a great job with that with the sausage book. That's my bad. But we want to articles, video, collaborations, any of that stuff you're interested in. Like we want to do that. All right. Here comes the more squishy part. Adam and I want to go on the road-ish and do some book signings and cook some food and do some demos and talk about the book in person. That becomes a little more challenging. We've got some ideas of some places we want to go and when we want to go, when we can go, but we'll need your help kind of along the way. So if you're in a place where you think this would do well, if you want to help organize an event, something like that, reach out to us, please. We'd love to help. We'd love to come hang out in person and drink some beers and cook some meat and just do fun things and see the place where you're from, do some hunting or fishing or foraging while we're there. That would be our like Cooking by Cuts tour.
Yeah. If you have a little BHA chapter that you're helping run and you want to do a backyard barbecue, or you want to get together for a pint night and do a little talk, like any of these kind of things, we'd be so happy to jump into that if we're able to.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's all your conservation groups, your hunting clubs. We'll work through that. And I think really this could be a fine time to talk about a fun book. And then this book, hopefully, so one thing we're going to plan, this book will be the textbook we're going to use for our upcoming whitetail doe camp in Oklahoma. So we use Jesse Griffith's hog book in Texas for our pig camp. Well, Oklahoma, we're going to use our book because it's the perfect resource for it. And we'll close on this. And this is a question for Adam. I'll ask you, and then I'm going to turn around and I'll answer the same. 5 years from now, what do you hope Cooking by Cuts has become?
I would hope that Cooking by Cuts has become a handy guidebook for people to, the everyday hunter, hobbyist, farmer, backyard butcher, whatever, to that I hope it's been blood splattered and dog-eared, and I hope that it's become a manual for people to approach any animal confidently, whether it's butchering or talking about it or cooking it. I hope that we've been able to express our thoughts in such a way that it helps you in the future. And I hope that in 5 years, this is like a beat up book, not on bookshelves, but on the butcher table along with you. And I hope that it changes the way you see animals and you see food. That's what I truly hope. How about yourself?
I would hope that like in 5 years that if you bought the book now, that you have flipped through every page, you've bloodstained it, as Adam said, you've cooked every recipe in there, you've jotted notes in the margins and like cooked your own recipes based off our stuff. Our stuff is not the be all end all of food. Like, please use this as a motivation factor to like find your own path in the world of food. And I hope that in 5 years you have to buy another copy, not because I want you to buy more books, but because you've used this one so much that you need something more. And you know that this book is something that you see people have at hunter ed classes, that people are giving it as the first book you give to somebody as like their initial intro into hunting. Maybe you give them like some of those more philosophical books of like the responsibilities of a hunter or things like that. And then you're like, oh yeah, by the way, here's this book where you can learn about the animal from a food perspective and like really cook some delicious things and really learn how to butcher and do this. I hope that it's a point of conversation for somebody somewhere. And I hope people can be like, this is great, and rally around it and just really enjoy food more.
Absolutely. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun work for us. And I think we've been excited about it the whole time. It hasn't turned into this slog at any point. Like, I think it's still a very fresh, exciting project. And I think it's got our gears turning for new content as well and new books in the future. And I think this one is going to be a necessary part of any hunter's book collection.
Yeah. This isn't our final album. We got more in us. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Please punch that 5-star button, leave us a review. Make sure you order a copy of Cooking by Cuts, please. That helps us out tremendously. You'll enjoy it. I promise you. If you do not, I will send you a note to your home apologizing and give you a sticker. I don't know. I think you're going to really like the book. So I don't envision that you're going to send me bad notes. But if you do, so be it. All right. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.